Ahorita si quieres.
Ya le mandamos a dejar. ¿Podrían, por favor, pasar al auditorio de aquí junto para que se puedan sentar? Los chicos de atrás. Sí, no, sí, pero los que están atrás. ¿Todos? Ah, perdón. Ya los quiero mandar. Hola, maestro. Bueno, vamos a dar inicio a esta conferencia. Pues esta conferencia es un tema fundamental para todos, no nada más para el alto ejecutivo, sino para todas las personas, porque se trata de nuestra personalidad, de quiénes somos, a dónde vamos y cómo vamos. Quiero presentarles a nuestros colegas del Presidium que hoy nos acompañan. Presentarles a la licenciada Victoria Zapata, al doctor Robert Hogan, a Wendy Howell Hogan, a Sol Feher y a nuestro director, el doctor Juan Manuel González. Antes de presentar la currícula del doctor Hogan y de Victoria, le voy a pedir al doctor Juan Manuel que nos dé unas palabras de bienvenida.
Hola, buenas tardes. Dos palabritas, 2 minuticos. La vinculación académica es uno de los ejes estratégicos de la IBERO, por lo que contribuye a la formación de nuestros alumnos, y es por ello que quiero agradecer a la licenciada Victoria Zapata, directora general de HR Tools México y exalumna de la carrera de Relaciones Internacionales de esta universidad, que refuerza estos lazos de vinculación por el compromiso y por el cariño que le tiene a su alma mater y que nos ha honrado con permitirnos tener esta actividad el día de hoy. Hoy nos van a compartir la experiencia en la metodología Hogan, creada por el doctor Robert Hogan, autoridad mundial en ciencia de la personalidad y el liderazgo. Así que les pido que se preparen para transformar su comprensión del liderazgo efectivo con una de las mentes más brillantes en psicología organizacional. Bienvenidos y bienvenidas, yo no les quito más tiempo y vamos a aprovechar este espacio. Gracias.
Bien, voy a presentar a María Victoria Zapata Guerrero, con más de 45 años de experiencia en el área de capital humano. Ha ocupado puestos directivos en organizaciones de distintos giros, nacionales como internacionales. Comprende perfectamente los retos del área, así como las estrategias de negocio y la forma en que la pueden conectar a los objetivos del área de capital humano en estos retos organizacionales. Actualmente es representante de Hogan Assessments System. Introduce las evaluaciones de Hogan en México y en otros países de habla hispana. HR Tools ha aplicado más de 280,000 evaluaciones Hogan y ha certificado en el uso e interpretaciones de las evaluaciones Hogan a más de 900 profesionales de recursos humanos. Victoria ha desarrollado e implementado prácticas innovadoras en el uso y aprovechamiento de las evaluaciones tanto individuales como en grupos, a lo largo de toda la cadena de procesos de gestión de talento. Exalumna de la licenciatura en Relaciones Industriales con maestría en Desarrollo Humano. Victoria nos va a dar una pequeña introducción a lo que es esta herramienta y un marco de contexto para poder escuchar al doctor Robert Hogan. Gracias, Victoria.
Muy amable, Cristi. Buenas tardes a todos. Estoy emocionadísima por estar en mi escuela. Compañeros, bueno, lo que quiero compartir con ustedes es por qué estamos aquí y prácticamente decir qué es Hogan y por qué evaluarlos, o como que es algo, posiblemente para algunos de ustedes pueda ser un tema nuevo. Vivimos en la era de los datos, entonces pues todo tiene datos, ¿verdad? Cualquier gadget que tenemos nos da indicadores y en las organizaciones no es la excepción. Sin embargo, para que las organizaciones puedan lograr sus estrategias, dicen que el factor humano es lo más importante. Entonces, para poder hacer esto, la estrategia organizacional, cuando se fundamenta en datos válidos sobre las personas, puede contribuir significativamente en los resultados positivos de las organizaciones y de las personas. Porque, por una parte, las organizaciones encuentran el talento necesario y adecuado para las posiciones y los retos que enfrentan, y por el otro lado, las personas encuentran satisfacciones y pues una estancia y un éxito en lo que estén haciendo, ¿verdad? Pues por ello que las organizaciones en todo el mundo ocupan evaluaciones para poder, digamos, seleccionar y tomar decisiones sobre el talento. Aquí solamente quiero compartirles, si ustedes quieren trabajar, si quieren empezar a hacerlo, o si ya lo están haciendo, es muy probable que les hayan hecho algún tipo de evaluación y diagnóstico. Entonces, es importante que sepan que esta herramienta se utiliza en empresas como es una muestra específica de algunos de nuestros clientes. Tenemos más de 544 clientes y posiblemente te interese trabajar en alguna de ellas. Si te interesa, pues vas a pasar por este proceso. Entonces, la importancia que tiene Hogan en el mundo es desde hace 50 años. Ellos están ubicados, aparte de sus oficinas en Tulsa, Oklahoma, distribuyen la herramienta a través del mundo con distribuidores como nosotros, y están en más de 50 países. Esta es su oficina y lo que se dedican ellos es quiero presentarles un poquito de qué es Hogan, porque pues bueno, leyeron el descriptivo, ¿verdad? Sin embargo, aquí hay alguna información importante que pudieran ustedes serles atractivos. Su core business es la investigación y cómo correlacionar el desempeño de las personas con los resultados de negocio. Es básicamente su core business, tiene 50 años actualizándose, y permanentemente lo que hacen no es la herramienta, sino el research que hay detrás. ¿Okay? Y también un dato interesante, importante para ustedes, es que el 75% de las empresas Fortune 500 utilizan Hogan en sus procesos a nivel global. ¿Okay? Bueno, pues con esto quisiera es una pequeña introducción de lo que es, por qué estamos aquí. Lo más importante es que conozcan ustedes una perspectiva que está actualizada en el campo laboral y en lo que puedan ustedes, para que aprovechen mejor la información. Ahora quiero compartirles a ustedes información sobre el doctor Robert Hogan. Él es una autoridad internacional en la evaluación de la personalidad en el campo de liderazgo y efectividad organizacional. Se le atribuye ampliamente el mérito de demostrar cómo los factores de personalidad influyen en la efectividad organizacional en áreas que van desde el clima organizacional y el liderazgo hasta la selección y el desempeño efectivo de los equipos. El doctor Hogan es autor de más de 300 artículos de revistas, capítulos y libros, así como ha sido creador del inventario de personalidad de Hogan, la encuesta de desarrollo de Hogan y el inventario de motivos y valores y preferencias, como el de razonamiento de negocios. El doctor recibió su doctorado en la Universidad de California, Berkeley, especializándose en evaluación de la personalidad. Trabajó como profesor en McFarland y director del Departamento de Psicología de la Universidad de Tulsa durante los 17 años. Previamente, el doctor fue profesor de Psicología y Relaciones Sociales en la Universidad de Johns Hopkins. Es miembro de la APAC, Asociación Estadounidense de Psicología, y de la SIOP, Sociedad para la Investigación Industrial y Organizacional. Y sin más preámbulo, pues permítanme presentarles Dr. Hogan. We're ready for you. If would you like to join us, please? Thank you so much. Gracias a todos. Oh my God. Sorry. Okay.
Bienvenidos amigos, bienvenidos a mi casa es su casa, es el tiempo para una fiesta, pero one problem, no puedo hablar su lengua molto bene, necesito que yo hablo en inglés. I want to talk about leadership, our particular point of view on leadership. Our view on leadership is quite unique. We're the only people on earth who talk the way we do about leadership, but that's fine because we're right and they're wrong. So first of all, leadership is not an HR fad. Leadership is the most important problem in public affairs. When good leaders are in place, good things happen. When bad leaders are in place, bad things happen, like in Washington, D.C. High performance, yes, sí, es verdad. Economists estimate that in a medium-sized organization, high-performing executives add an additional $25 million in revenue in a 6-year tenure compared to mediocre performers. The good ones bring a lot of money to the table. CEOs account for, and by the way, we are the first people who ever asked the question, are CEOs worth the money? And we discovered that there was no answer to that. But economists have subsequently worked on the problem. And the estimate is that CEOs account for somewhere between 15 and 40% of the revenue, variation in revenue in an organization, independent of the in commercial or industrial sector in which the people are operating. So CEOs really matter. But finally, then he said, surprisingly few executives are high performing. I love Pareto's rule. You all remember Pareto's rule, right? Pareto said that human performance is a fractal distribution. That's what he said. That's not what I said. What I said is it's not normally distributed. So it turns out that it doesn't matter what the activity is, leadership, bookkeeping, pole vaulting, riding horses, selling guns, 80% of the people will do 20% of the work. That's going to be true in your organization as well as mine. 80% of the people do 20% of the work, and 20% of the people do 80% of the work. There's an old rule in an organization. If you want to get something done, find a busy person, because they're the ones that will get it done for you. And Pareto's rule applies to executives. 20% of them do 80% make 80% of the money, and 80% make 20% of the money. Are you with me? Lo siento? Okay, so, go a little machine. It doesn't love me anymore. It hates me.
No,
Yeah, it does.
you can press it here.
There, that's one you like. Yeah. So 2/3 of the CEOs that are currently in place in the United States are going to be fired in 5 years. The failure rate in CEOs is about that. 65 to 75% of the managers in the United States alienate their employees. 10% of the Baltimore I used to live in Baltimore. 10% of the Baltimore workforce report that they fantasize daily about killing their boss. 65% of the American workforce say they would give up a pay raise if someone would fire their boss. 70% of the U.S. workforce say the worst aspect of the worst, the most stressful, the most intolerable aspect of their life is their immediate boss. 100% of employed adults report having spent some significant time working for an intolerable boss, not just an incompetent, but intolerable. Nope, that didn't work either. Yeah. So here's my former girlfriend. Actually, that's not true. I wanted to give you some examples of really awful, disastrously awful CEOs. This woman's name is Carlin Fiorina. I was on a plane once with her from San Francisco to San Diego. She's a holy terror. She'd been vice president of marketing at AT&T in New York, and she got the job as CEO of Hewlett-Packard, which at the time was a really important high-tech, or they made computers, they made stuff. And while she was CEO of Hewlett-Packard, she spent her time giving speeches and posing for magazine articles while the business was sinking. She gave herself huge bonuses while firing 50,000 employees. She at some point, while she was CEO at Hewlett Packard, the stock lost 50% of its value. They fired her in 2005. She ran for governor of California. The employees at Hewlett Packard put up several $1 million to run a campaign against her so she couldn't be governor of California. And in 2016, she ran for president of the United States. She competed with Trump. She's an utter disaster. She ruined everything she ever touched and got away with a whole bunch of money. Okay, I want to try this. There we go. This guy, Stanley O'Neill, was the CEO of Merrill Lynch, which is where Wendy and I invest. It's a pretty important organization for us. He was quite greedy. At the height of the bogus 2008, the financial crisis, he hired a team of South Koreans to get Merrill Lynch heavily into these dodgy real estate loans. He bankrupted Merrill Lynch. They had to sell Merrill Lynch to Bank of America, which ruined Merrill Lynch. And he left with $161 million. And he should have gone to jail for what he did, but he didn't go to jail. I'm not making these up. I could do this all evening. This guy, Robert Nardelli, was a senior executive at GE during GE's glory days. He didn't get the CEO job at GE, so he went on to Home Depot, where he ruined Home Depot. He bankrupted Home. That was a really successful company. You have to work hard to bankrupt a company that's successful. He was fired at Home Depot and he became CEO of Chrysler. He got a couple $1 billion in government bailout, and he ruined Chrysler. And then they finally failed him, and he got $210 million going out the door, the largest severance package in the history of business up to that point. And he got $210 million for ruining 3 different companies. Isn't it great? This guy was just crazy. The first 3 were mean. This guy was just crazy. I mean, crazy thoughts. He thought he was a great business strategist. In fact, he was a nutcase. He was the CEO of Time, which was a publishing empire, and he merged Time. He, at his idea, merged Time with Warner Communications, which was a TV business, and then with Time and Warner Communications, he merged them with a company called AOL. At that time, it was the largest commercial failure in the history of American business. He lost over $200 billion on the deal. He's living in a ashram now. He's a Hare Krishna. So how do we define leadership? That's it. Yeah. Academics. I'm a recovering academic. I spent 41 years as a professor. I regret every minute of it. What's the difference between a college student and a high school student? One summer vacation. So academics always define the literature. Harvard Business Review defines leadership in terms of the people who are in charge. But, he said, who gets to be in charge of a large, hierarchical, bureaucratic, male-dominated organization? Who gets to the top of an organization like that? Being in charge depends on, is a politician, not a leader. There's absolutely, you don't get to the top of an organization like that based on leadership. You get to the top based on politics. He says that, I wrote this like 5 years ago. Look at this. Many successful politicians, Donald Trump, I wrote that 5 years ago. Many successful politicians, Donald Trump, have no talent for leadership. Leadership is about building a team and getting people to work. And it's not just Donald Trump, it's all of them. So the woman who ran against Donald Trump on the Democratic side of the ticket, Kamala Harris, is known as the meanest person in Washington. Her staff, she has a 95% annual staff turnover rate. Does that sound like leadership when 95% of your staff quit every year? Think about that, 95% of your staff every year. And she's running for president because she has leadership. So big picture, politicians are not leaders, politicians are politicians. So my view is that the academic study of leadership has failed after 100, and there's no consensus at all after 100 years on what counts as an effective leader, but I'll give you my point of view. So here's how it goes. Nothing in psychology makes sense outside of biology, and nothing in biology makes sense outside of evolutionary theory. That's true. So if you want to understand leadership, I think you have to understand human origins. People evolved as group living animals. So we outside of our groups, people vitally depend on living on groups for their welfare, for their well-being. So at time one, and we're an old species, been around for 2 million years. For 2 million years, we've been living in these little bitty groups. And it's out, so there's competition within the group, there's competition within every group for status. Who's in charge, who's going up, who's coming down, who's next, who's succession planning, right? So within every group, there's competition for status. But between every group, there's competition for survival. So at time one, in the history of the species, the principal factor driving human evolution was warfare. In the history of the species, you're living in this part of the forest, they're living in this part of the forest, and at some point they think they like your resources better than theirs. They come to see you. And when they come to see you in the forest, they don't come with their lawyers. And if they're successful, they not only take over your part, they kill you and they eat you. And they literally eat you. Cannibalism was universal. It was just another food source. And if they kill you and eat you, you disappear from the gene pool. That's what biology is all about. It's about selection pressures. So what's the major factor keeping the group together when it's being invaded by another group? Leadership. So there's competition within groups for status. There's competition between groups for survival. If you lose the competition between groups, you're gone. You're out of business, and it doesn't matter who's in charge because you're someplace else. So the most important competition in life is between groups, and that's the function. That's the unique and crucial function of leadership, is to pull a group together so it can defend itself against external threats. So leadership is about leadership is a resource for the group, not a source of privilege for the incumbent. Leadership. So our point of view on leadership is it's all about being able to build a team that can outperform other teams, because life is about competition, and we Hogan Assessments have serious competition. We have people coming after us all the time. You have to. The most important function of leadership is to allow your group to prevail in competition with other competitors. So this is me comparing the traditional HR view with our view of leadership. So for the HR people, they define leadership in terms of who's in charge. We define leadership in terms of people who can build a successful team. I'm going to skip the next two. The key attributes of a leader for the HR people are charisma and confidence. The key attributes for leadership from our point of view are humility and competence. Charisma and confidence versus humility and competence. The great leaders, the really great leaders, are always quite humble and know what they're talking about. They're really good at their job. So charisma and confidence, I'm the man, put me in charge, versus humility and confidence. Where does the leader's legitimacy come from? In the HR view, it comes from your title, your status. I'm a retired naval officer. Is this sort of thing? Why do I have to do what you said? I have more stripes than you do. That's not leadership. That's just bullying. In our view, the leader's legitimacy comes from his or her competence, his ability to build the team and get the team to function effectively. What's the role of training? Well, in the HR view, it's optional because leaders know what they're doing. In our view, leadership training is absolutely essential because most people don't have a clue. What HR's view focuses on successful individuals. We focus on successful teams. That's the first place. If you want to know who should be the next CEO, go see who's running a good team. What's the role of competition? For HR people, competition is the most important competition is within the group. Is who's going to. It's the succession plan. For us, the most important competition is out there. Those people who are trying to take your job away from you. And finally, then, for the HR people, good leadership is normative. In our view, good leadership is the exception and not the rule. It's something you're lucky when you get it. You're lucky when you see it. Okay, so. Are you still with me? So personality predicts leadership. Who you are, that was a unique claim when we started making that claim about 20 years ago. And when we first said that, people really didn't believe us. They said, you're just wrong. There's no such thing as personality. There's no such thing as leadership, and blah, blah, blah. Personality predicts leadership. Who you are determines how you lead. It's fundamental. And so we start with that. That's a radical point of view. But we're also right. So who you are determines how you. We distinguish between the bright side of personality and the dark side of personality. That's important, and both sides of personality are important for leadership. So the bright side is me trying to behave myself up here. It's you sitting in your seat and pretending you care. It's all the right side. So the bright side is when it's filtered behavior. The dark side is you when you've been drinking too much, you when you're in a bad mood, you when you just don't give a shit. So bright side, dark side. And what happens is in organizations is that the leaders are in a superior position and they think they can afford to let their dark side show. Subordinates can't do that. Anyway, bright side and the dark side. That's an important distinction. And bright side builds staff engagement. The dark side destroys staff engagement. That's the critical. The problem with the dark side is not that you have one, because everybody has one. Everybody has a dark side. The problem with the dark side is that if you're in charge, it destroys staff engagement. That's the function of it. So leaders, so I'm going to make America great again. I'm going to take this company to the next level. I'm going to blah, blah, blah. No, you're not. It's the troops that are going to do it. It's the staff. It's the employees that are going to take it to the next level. They're the ones who do the work. So the most crucial dynamic in organizations is employee engagement. Will they work for you, and will they follow your lead and go where you want them to go? So employee engagement is the critical variable in organization. Employee engagement predicts every quantitative outcome that matters in an organization. And leadership, the function of leadership is to build engagement, and then the engagement drives the performance of the team. Engagement, absenteeism, turnover, customer service ratings, productivity, financial returns, all those are a function of engagement. Engagement is the bottom line in organizational life, and that's how leadership has its effect. It's through employee engagement. So it's a filtered effect. It's not Donald Trump's not going to pick up America and run to Canada. He's going to hire some people to do that for him, if they will. We call this the leadership value chain. This is kind of academic, but I think it's sort of interesting. So the leader's personality is operationalized in three ways: in terms of how the person behaves, the leader's behavior, in terms of the leader's values, and in terms of the kind of decisions that the leader makes. And all three of those have impact on employee engagement down at the bottom. And employee engagement is what drives business unit performance. So personality turns into behavior. You have three: behavior, structure, and consideration. Do you tell people what you want, and do you give them the resources they need to get there? And treating people, telling them what you want, and treating them with structure and consideration drives staff morale. Staff morale drives engagement. Engagement drives business unit performance. You see the chain there. In the middle, values. Your values determine the kind of culture you create for your staff. Some cultures are healthy. Some cultures are damaging. That it has to do with what you reward and what you punish. That creates the culture. And certain cultures create engagement. Other cultures destroy engagement. Engagement drives business unit performance. Boom, there you go. And then finally, decisions about people and policies and people and staffing and strategy. Who's going to do it, and what are we going to do, and who's going to do it? So, and then the staff if you're in charge, the staff is constantly watching you to see what kind of decisions you make. Do you make good? If you make bad decisions, it's going to destroy morale. It's not a question of making good decisions, because you can't. 50% of all decisions you'll make in your life are wrong because you don't have enough data. Smart people who have good judgment, are people who change their mind when they realize they made a bad decision. So making good judgment is not about getting things right. Good judgment is about getting things right, and if you don't, changing your mind, because the staff are watching, and you got to say, that was a mistake, we need to do this and not that. So how you treat people, the kind of culture you create for people, and the kind of decisions that you make all drive staff engagement, which drives business unit performance. That's called the leadership value chain, courtesy of Hogan Assessments. But you can have it for free this evening. Okay, so I'm just going to make a quick point about person. This is the standardized, accepted taxonomy of the bright side of personality. I'm just putting it up there to tell you that's what the bright side. That's how the bright side is conventionally organized, described. That's the taxonomy. Now, really important, stimulated by us, that there was a really important meta-analysis about 2002, which 15,000 organizations, 20,000 managers, so across 15,000 organizations and 20,000 managers, what they found was four of these 5 themes predict leadership emergence across every level and every kind of organization. The best predictor was adjustment, the highest. The worst predictor was agreeableness, number 3. The overall multiple correlation between personality and leadership was 0.55, okay, which means by definition, for sure, forever, if you believe in data, it's simply the case, personality predicts leadership better, and the correlation between IQ was 0.23. So it's indisputable. If you believe in data, personality predicts leader performance across all kinds of levels of organizations and types, and the numbers are just quite real. And how good is so multiple R of 0.55, how good is a multiple R of 0.55? That's the correlation between personality and leadership. How good is that correlation? Here are some standard correlations from medical procedures. So coronary bypass and do you survive, 0.08. And amphetamines and snot, 0.11. Height and weight of U.S. adults, 0.44. Viagra and improved performance, 0.38. So, personality is stronger than Viagra. So, it's just simply the fact. The data are absolutely clear. We're talking about 20,000 cases, 15,000 organizations, multiple R, 0.53. That's way bigger than that's. It's bigger. It's very substantial. It's the most important single factor driving. Personality is the most important single factor driving leadership. Okay. Sorry, I got behind in my page turning. So, these are a series of 5 studies that I came across in my research, all of which point to the same thing. There's a guy named Norman Dixon wrote a book called The Psychology of Military Incompetence. He showed that there were a bunch of them, every major British military disaster could be traced to the personality of the bad personality of the leader. This guy named John Bentz was a friend of mine. He ran the HR department at Sears. Sears used to be a major corporation in the U.S. He must have hired 50,000 managers. He found in his data, and he hired them all usually with IQ measures and a good personality measure. They all looked smart and talented when they came in the door. So 2/3 of them failed. Just failed. They had to leave the organization. These 2 guys, McCall and Lombardo, they worked at Center for Creative Leadership, CCL. They copied him, basically. They copied off his paper. What they found is in a large sample of their executives, about 2/3 of them will fail. 2/3 of all executives are going to fail. And the reason they fail is because of why I said so. No, what I did was I looked at all that research, and I saw certain themes there. What I concluded was that managers fail for about 11 reasons. There are about 11 reasons that they fail. And it's a very robust taxonomy of managerial failure. And that's what the dark side is. It's these dimensions of a person. So personality predicts leadership, good and bad. Bright side of personality predicts positive performance. The dark side of personality predicts bad performance. These are the dark side themes. I don't really want to go through this. Every one of these 11 themes has a positive component to it. So the first one, excitable. People with high scores on excitable bring a lot of passion and energy and drive to a project. They really do. They live. The problem is they wear people out. People with high scores on cautious don't make dumb mistakes. They're good decision makers. People with high scores on skeptical are very insightful about politics. They know who the enemies are. People with high scores on reserve can really take the heat when the newspapers and the television get after you. They're bulletproof, etc. But each of these has a very positive, and it's why they get hired in the leadership job in the first place. But they have significant downside. This big point, personality predicts leadership, good and bad. This is a taxonomy of characteristics that predict bad, failed leadership. Okay, you got that? That's the only point I'm making. Is we know the standard dimensions of failed leadership. So how do we manage the dark side? That's the question you're asking yourselves, isn't it? When you get ready to fail in your next job. Well, there are 2 ways actually. There's something called forgiveness credit, and there's something called strategic self-awareness. The 2 ways to manage the dark side are through forgiveness credit and strategic self-awareness. Forgiveness credit is pretty simple. It's just every dark side theme has positive qualities. Being seen as effective. If you're a winner, if you get results, if you win, they'll forgive you what a jerk you are. That's really true in professional athletics and these professional football teams. A lot of those coaches are just awful leaders, but they're successful. And to the degree they're successful, people are willing to forgive them how badly they treat their players. So forgiveness credit, but not everybody gets that lucky. Forgiveness credit. And then secondly, what is strategic self-awareness? This requires just a word or two about, yeah, well, wait a minute. Do I want to say that? Yeah, I do. Personality should be defined from two perspectives. What is personality? There's not one personality. There's two components, two major components of personality. There's your identity, the person you think you are, the person you've invented for yourself, and you hope other people will believe. So there's the you that you know, that's your identity. And then there's the you that we know, which is your reputation. The you that you know is what you know, and you hope people will believe it, but the you that we know is the real you. And people say to us all the time, when we give them back their assessment results, they say, that's not the person I think I am. Well, that's precisely the point. The person you think you are is probably not, it doesn't matter what people think about you. It doesn't matter how you think about yourself. It matters how other people respond to you. So there's your identity, which is a story you tell yourself about yourself, and which is, by the way, highly changeable and flexible over time. And then there's your reputation, which is a consensus of other people about your performance. And two more things, I guess. First, 100 years of research on identity has led to nothing. There are no results to report. There's nothing you can do with what people say about themselves, how they think about their. The research on identity has led to no outcomes. Conversely, about 20 years of research on identity, 20 years of research on reputation has led to a cornucopia of findings. Everything we know about personality and performance comes from defining personality in terms of reputation. So if you want to get better, the thing you have to work on is not how you think about yourself. The thing you need to work on is how other people respond to you. How your reputation, and by the way, so I'm not being clear here. Reputations form really fast. Within 3 minutes of meeting someone, their reputation is intact. Second thing is there will be complete consensus among the people who know you about what kind of person you are, so that people you don't know, people you've never met, already know a lot about you, because your reputation is out there in social media, right? It's the best single place to create a reputation. So there are four components. So success, getting better, changing your personality, overcoming the dark side depends on four things. First of all, the first thing you need to do is understand what your reputation actually is. How do other people actually see you? Not how does your mother talk about you, but how do others see you? And folks are often not real happy to find out how they're actually perceived. I think Donald Trump's not paying any attention. And then understand what it is you do. So first of all, understand clearly how other people perceive you. Then secondly, understand what it is you do to create that reputation for yourself. What are the things you're doing that cause other people to see you that and describe you that way? And then third, figure out what triggers that. That's behavioral cognitive therapy. And then finally, learn to control your problematic behaviors. You're getting ready to yell, don't yell. You're getting ready to lie, don't lie. Getting ready to show off, don't show off. So, I'm sorry, that didn't jump. It's not jumping again. It doesn't like me. It doesn't like you either. So actually, I want to go back one. No, I think I do.
Changing personality?
No, final thoughts. Sorry. One more.
Before or after?
One more, the next one. Yep. So this is the end. We're almost done. The fiesta can start any moment. These are points you ought to take away from this presentation. Points I would hope you would take away. These are the bottom line on the whole thing. 65 to 75% of existing managers are driving their staff crazy. They're destroying staff morale, and they're losing money as a result. They're causing unnecessary turnover, unnecessary shrinkage, poor customer service, bad quality. So the base rate of managerial incompetence is 65 to 75%. Most managers are driving people nuts. why are there so many bad, so the next question is, why are there so many bad managers? And the answer to that is emergence versus effectiveness. And let me explain. Try to do this shortly. There's a set of behaviors that cause people to stand out in organizations, and it's called talking in meetings. It's called it's called networking constantly. There's real data on this. There's certain kinds of people. These are typically the people who are called hypos. They spend their time networking, doing politics, attending meetings, and just being seen. And they tend to rise quite rapidly and get the promotions, and they are going to be bad leaders. That's the 65 to 75% that fails. The second group, which are called effective leaders, are people who spend their time working on their teams, working on making sure the team performs well. They're the people who are actually making money for the organization. Now, promotion processes favor the guys who stand out, and they tend to ignore the people who are actually doing a good job. And you see this, and in fact, it's almost an accident when really good leaders get the top jobs because they get overlooked. So if you're an effective leader, you need to learn some talent, you have to discover some talent for promotion. But if you're in charge of the promotion process, the best single way to identify the good ones is to ask the staff, because the staff always know who the good leaders are. And they know that these noisy fans, these guys that make all the noise, are crazy. And they know, so why are there so many bad leaders? Because the people who are making the promotions don't listen to the staff. We have a niece who just changed jobs. She went from this company to another company. She said, I'm so happy. She said, I'm going to work for the best manager in the organization. The entire staff in the organization knew already who the best manager. They always know. They know who the good ones are, they know who the bad ones are, and they know that mostly they got bad ones to deal with. So why are there so many bad managers? Because the people who are doing the promotion won't listen to the staff. And then finally, the last thought, dark side behavior can be managed. But first of all, you have to know what needs to be managed, and then you have to do a good job in order for them to forgive you your bad behavior. Il y a des questions? Hay preguntas? No preguntas. Then we can go. It's time for the fiesta, right? Did you follow that? Was that clear, Claro? Thank you.
No hay ninguna pregunta. Bueno, ya la pregunta dijeron que no, pero nada más quería asegurarme si hay algún comentario o algo que quieran saber. ¿No? Fue muy claro. Aquí hay una pregunta. Dr. Hogan, there's a question for you. But you have a seat. No. Creo que está apagado.
Robert por aquí, que lo conocí hace 10 años. Quería preguntarle dos cositas. Una, cuando nos habla... Sí.
He met you 10 years ago, doctor.
Oh, sorry, lo siento mucho. Pobrecito.
Pobrecito.
Que me la vas diciendo y se la
Pero
vas
sobreviví, dile.
But he survived, says it.
And he prospered. And he's much better looking now.
Cuando está hablando él del lado oscuro,
When you talk about the dark side
el lado brillante,
and the bright side,
es el mismo concepto del Dr. Young cuando hablaba del lado oscuro.
Is it the same concept as Dr. Young? Well, you know, the psychology, that's good. That's a good one.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
pretty
thank
much.
you. That's the question, is that?
I think
anyone?
one time in 1,000 somebody gets that. That's very clever. Jung was really smart.
Thank you.
That's all I have to say. Yeah.
Well,
No, actually, I can say more than that. Yeah, I think there are archetypes. We're a biological being. We're born pre-adapted to the average expectable environment. Babies know how to nurse as soon as they're born. Babies know how to burp, they know how to pee. There are all these things we know how to do just as soon as we hit the right first stimulus. One of the things we're pre-adapted to is good leadership. People know good leadership when they see it. It's an archetype. And that's that, yeah.
Ok.
Thank you.
Otra pregunta más.
Another question.
Hablando del sistema Hogan,
Talking about Hogan
que
system
me tocó
assessments.
verlo en un par de ocasiones, quisiera aprovechar esta oportunidad para que nos explicara un poquito más sobre lo que en español le llamaba los descarriladores.
Oh, he wants to understand a little bit more about the derailers, which is the dark side. But what would you like to know about it? Because he explained a little. Perdón, ¿qué necesitas saber para que?
Bueno, uno exactamente, si sigue usando el mismo método en el assessment de Hogan, de descarriladores, y si es verdad que puede prevenir, hasta cuando una persona, un ejecutivo, puede ser potencialmente una persona que pueda robar.
Oh, he wants to understand if there's the HDS is still the same. I think he would like to know if there is an update on the norms. That would be a good, information. Update on the norms.
On the norms,
Yeah, no, that's one of the questions. If it's the same, inventory, HDS, yes, it is. Sí lo es.
We are
And he
working
also
right now on a complete, thorough update, but the norms have been, we update the norms monthly, and because we gather a lot of data. I wanted to say a couple more things about the dark side. First, each of those dark side characteristics is real strengths. So people with high scores on what we call skeptical really understand politics. And people with low scores on skeptical are like a deer in the headlights. They're going to get just run over in an organization because they can't see what's coming. People with high scores on colorful are really charming in front of a group. I mean, it's absolutely essential in politics to have a high score on colorful. So every one of those dark side tendencies has very positive consequences. And if you're low on those things, you've got a problem on your hands. You're going to need more of what but as my friend Rob Kaiser he talks about strengths overused. And that's what, so they have real positive benefits, but they will get you in trouble in time. So it's a question of just the right amount.
Así es como necesitabas la explicación de la. Sí.
Sí.
Muchísimas gracias.
Gracias, Robert.
Thank you, Robert.
Mon plaisir. Mon grand plaisir.
There's a question over there. Mhm. There's a microphone, Gerardo.
You answer this one. You answer this one.
No. You want me to? That's your friend.
So my question would be more about what would be like a good way for us to understand our reputation to other people when I would believe that sometimes the people who knows us best might not be willing to tell us the harsh truths about ourselves.
I think you may share with him that you have something in your hand.
Well, this is part of the exam, right? But for people who really haven't taken the assessment.
So the question is, what's the best way for you to understand your reputation? It has to do with what we do for a living, Hogan Assessments. All of our assessments are keyed against observers' reputation. So if you say, I read 10 books a year, we don't care if you read 10 books a year. We don't care if you think you read 10 books a year. What we care about is those people who say they read 10 books a year, what do other people say about them? So we're using, the items don't mean what they say. The items mean, it's an issue. It's a problem in philosophy of science, and it's really interesting. It's old school pragmatism. Things don't mean what they say. Things mean what they predict, as in their consequences. What are the consequences of saying this about yourself? So we don't care what you say. What we care is what that predicts. People who say the following things, how do other people respond to that? And that's, so the best way, so you could go ask people about yourself, or you can take our inventories. And so our inventories are the second best way. Actually, the best possible way to do it is with a 360. But so our inventories are keyed against 360. So our inventories are the second best way of finding out about your reputation. They won't tell you anything about how you see yourself, because we don't care about that. So how you, in my view, how you see yourself is completely irrelevant. Actually, it's probably what will get you in trouble. What you need to know is how other people see you, and that you find that out. That's what the scores on our inventories tell you. And by the way, we are the only assessment provider on earth that does that. To do that, to be able to say what items predict, takes research, takes time, takes money, takes effort, and no one has the time or patience for that. And AI is not going to solve that problem. AI is actually going to contribute to the problem, because they're going to think, because stuff you scraped off of social media predicts something you said over here. You've discovered something. What you say, it doesn't matter what you say about yourself. What matters is what other people say about you when you say those things about yourself. So it's a way more sophisticated point of view about. Right.
Thank you.
Is that clear?
Yes. By the way, de tu pregunta, la cuestión es que no es que te digan las demás personas, porque cada quien tenemos nuestros sesgos, pero la manera más científica, validada, objetiva, si le quieres llamar así, es a través de una evaluación que que tenga una medición confiable. Porque si no, pues igual a mí no me gusta algo de ti, pero porque me está reflejando a mí, no porque tú lo tengas, ¿no? Entonces, pues por eso es la diferencia de tener una conversación o un feedback con un jefe, o con un papá, o con una hermana, o con alguien más, que pues tiene su verdad, por supuesto, pero tiene un grado de subjetividad. Y en el caso de la psicometría, pues tiene estadística detrás, que ya no es lo que dijo tu jefe o tu mamá o alguien así, sino es lo que está diciendo una norma que está validada en el mundo para medir a la gente con la misma cinta métrica. Al contrario, gracias a ti.
If you want to improve your tennis game, you go see a tennis pro. And the tennis pro has you hit some balls. You want to improve your golf game, you go see a golf pro. The golf pro has you hit some balls. And then they say, you're not getting your racket back soon enough. You're not getting sideways at the ball. You're not keeping your eye on the ball. If you want to improve your life game, you see Hogan Assessments. Because the assessments are just they're just samples of your regular behavior. It's watching you hit some balls. Our assessments are just a way of watching you hit some balls, except it's watching how you interact with other people. And how you interact with other people is what drives everything in your life. So we would call ourselves life coaches. See?
You can be a good leadership in one role or in one cultural focus, and at the same time you can be a worse leader in another cultural organization.
Yes, the answer is we didn't. That's a whole other long discussion, but it's a really important discussion. Yes, your values determine how well you fit with a culture. If your values are inconsistent with the culture of the organization, you're done. It doesn't matter how good you are. You will not survive.
So I'm not.
No. No, probably not.
Okay, thank you.
That's why you resign. Veía una mano por aquí levantada. Ok, adelante. Gerardo, si le puedes dar el micrófono, por favor. No está funcionando.
I can just talk like that. I don't care. So regarding that question, if we're talking about how can a person me as an individual can know if I can be a good leader in certain spaces, and which spaces should I not be? Should I start try it and learn from an actual another leader? I don't know if I
Do you want to say something about that?
So, okay, so how can I know that I can be a good leader in certain spaces, and how do I know where I should not be the leader?
I don't mean to put you on the spot. Well, first of all, we think, I'm trying to get Wendy to say this, good leaders are good leaders are good leaders. So the fit has to do with, so good leadership is good leadership. It's the same everywhere. The variables are, what's the team task? And if you're in charge of the team, you need to be good at the team task. You need to have those specific competencies. If you're going to run a team of programmers, you better know something about programming. If you're going to run a team of soccer players, you better know something about soccer. And then the third thing is the culture. The people who own the company, their values will drive the culture. And if your values are inconsistent with that culture, it doesn't matter how good you are, you're done. So leader is a leader is a leader, but you need to know what you're talking about. Go ahead, Winnie.
Well, I think you'll probably still be a good leader in that culture, but it won't work for you. I mean, you could still be directing a team and creating productivity and meeting your goals and doing all that, and you're giving them a vision and you're leading them, but it won't work for you and it may not work for the people you report to, because they're not really interested in how well your team's doing if they don't have those values. So there's no way to pinpoint and say, well, you would be probably really good in leading at a hospital. And we have, one of the things that I talk about too, a lot of these things, you know, there's agile leadership, there's this leadership, there's that leadership. No, I mean, like he said, leadership is leadership is leadership. And so I think if you're starting out, you know, probably you just have to test some different environments.
Sí.
So, as an expert in the topic of leadership, what would you say we're seeing the rise of so many controversial leaders or bad leaders right now in the world? What factors would you say are influencing these?
Well, unfortunately, I mean, unfortunately, in a democracy, everybody gets to vote. And most of the people in my family are not qualified to vote. They don't know enough. Most of the people in her family are not qualified to vote. They don't keep up. They don't follow, they don't know what the issues are. They don't know what these people stand for. They just hear a statement like "Make America Great Again." They go, "Oh, okay, that's good." It's most, unfortunately, in democracies, the popular vote rules, and you get a lot of dumb people voting.
I was thinking, Doctor, about the possibility of they've been always there, but now you know them all the time because the media, I mean, networking, and so, I mean, LinkedIn or Facebook or X or whatever. You know it because we all know now everything.
Should also say that guys like Viktor Orban and Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump are very smart guys. They're smart, they're ruthless, they're strategic, they're relentless, they're dangerous, they're tough. They're tougher than you or me. I mean, they'll kill people. They really will kill people to get their way. I mean, I don't know how willing you are to kill people, but I sort of draw the line. I mean, they're just tough, relentless, and they got a lot of money. You know, they control the media. And they know how to construct an argument that appeals to the greatest number of people. People that we call them hoople heads. Means uneducated commoners. They just life as a party, and you got a lot of bad people voting. A lot of people voting who are unqualified to do so. I know that sounds elitist, but that's you asked me.
No, but I have another question. Follow that. If your answer is that our political system is based on uninformed people making the decisions, what can we expect? Like, why do we need to focus on these types of leadership instead of just focus on being popular to get to those places of? Well, I know why, but I want to know your answer.
This is our politician. He taught Viktor Orban everything he knows.
Yeah, by the way, I'm from Hungary, so I know what I'm talking about. You can guess I moved from Hungary to the US. Great choice, isn't it? By the way, thanks for spending your pre-Valentine Day with us. So I think even just to maybe also address the previous question, I mean, think about what happens here. I mean, it's exactly the same story what you see in corporate world. People who are becoming visible, network, becoming attractive to the crowd, charisma, you know what we're talking about, are popular. They've always been popular. History just repeats itself. So we are again in that cycle. So meanwhile, I agree with Dr. Hogan as well that people, I would say, that can be more informed with the falsified social media information at a much faster pace, but it's nothing new. The same thing in the Greek Empire, in Rome, was always the same. If people see, charisma is animal magnetism. This is what with us. We're getting attracted. I mean, first time we see the individual, cool. Let it be male, female. And we're just getting attracted, and that's really distorting the information what we're getting. And my answer would be that, for example, I mean, like, Viktor Orban could be blamed for that, actually. He figured it out. He was 40 years in the game to understand what people want to hear. Do they really think this? They don't think this. Don't get that wrong. They're not. They just know what to say. And actually, if you look at it, how Trump learned from Orban, they're in touch in the last 10 years, and they're going, the big, how do you call it, ICAP? What's the name of the organization? Like the the big Republican, they go to Hungary and study what they do on a day-to-day basis. It's very dangerous. Is it? Well, but to answer your question, it's still, if you are, let's see, you're going to be in your career that you're going to be a leader. For you, it's important that you understand to distinguish, because you're going to be more successful if you have the company. If you want to advance in your career, well, you need to have the charisma as well, unfortunately, because this is how you're getting selected. But if you have good leaders in the company where you work for, they know that you need both. You need to be effective and also at the same time have that some limited level of charisma. You need to also network. You need to sell your ideas. So those are not necessarily bad, but if they overplayed, it can be manipulated. And you know, this is where we are now. Yeah. But it's just a cycle, I think.
Now you had a question.
Remember, politicians are not necessarily leaders.
Yeah, so my question kind of had to do with that. You were talking about how, you were, I don't think it's
Okay. You were talking about how sort of like a bad leader is this person who's like constantly trying to be seen and call for everyone's attention, sort of like, you know, these leaders that we've mentioned. And a good leader is, you know, looking to be more involved and so on. So, but I think it's, how do you sort of like find this balance between being a good leader for the people that you're leading, right, which is obviously very important, but also being a good leader to the people, to put it this way, like to the people with the money. You know what I mean? Like, how do you get to be in a leadership position and to be a good leader if it's not through networking and being seen, is what I mean.
It's a complicated business, and it's kind of a dirty business, but the higher up you go, the dirtier it gets. Joel, did you want to say something about it?
Well, so if you use the definition of a good leader as being someone who can build an effective team, and that team might be any kind of team, right? A working team, a soccer team, a volunteer church group, whatever. So you have those skills to make that as a leader, right? So you've got that down. I'll give you a quick study that was done about emergence, and he talked about it a little bit, emergence and effectiveness. They network, they're charming. Fred Luthans did a study of about 240 leaders, and he literally walked around, followed them for like 2 years, he and his team, writing down everything that they did, the action, the behavior. And what he found was the effective leaders were the ones that were working with their teams all the time, talking to their teams, directing their teams, giving them vision, giving them assignments. And the emerging leaders were ones that spent all the day on the phone talking to their boss, telling them what a good job they did, glad handing everybody they saw in the hallways, right? So the good news and the bad news about that is there's only about a 10% overlap. So that means there's 10% of the people who sit in that nice circle where they're doing a good job and they get noticed because they have enough of both. So you just have to, it's a little bit like Joel was talking about, you have to have a little bit of both sides. You have to have some self-promotion, but you have to have results that you can actually promote, if that helps.
Just also maybe repeat one point that Dr. Hogan mentioned about intra-team and inter-team competition. Emergent people fight for their status. This is how they're getting up, but it's not healthy for the organization because if you remember from the evolutionary theory, you need to win the fight against the competition, not within the company. So don't get it wrong, effective people can be fiercely competitive, but they're not competitive within the group, within the company, but against the competition, and that's a huge difference. You see, so they do have that competence that they represent the value and the competitiveness for the company itself. So that's the point there. So it's important. So they do that. So they're humble, but they are ready to kill the competition too.
Thank you.
¿Alguna otra pregunta?
Mr. Politician, sorry I forgot your name. Sure, thank you. I'm Juan Carlos. About Donald Trump and other leaders, between quotations, the question is, on terms of politicians or people that manage countries, really exists the concept of bad leaders and good leaders? I mean, let me go back to the history. Adolf Hitler was a leader, really was a leader or not? Because the definition of leader involved the good situation of the people. But there are leaders that are not helping the people. For that reason, my question, exist for you, in your opinion, really bad leaders and good leaders in terms of governments or politicians?
Yes. When the Russians invaded Berlin, Hitler could have won an election. He was still that popular.
But I think also, if you, the example you use of some leaders that may be really good in terms of followership, shall we say, but the differential is some of the things that were done under Hitler's regime were not that great, right? Sorry. but it's, that becomes about values. So what did he value? You know, what kind of values did he portray and embrace and take with him? And that's kind of where the ship starts going downhill. In those cases.
But he could have won an election because he made life better for his followers. Made life horrible for other people.
Yes.
One more time, leadership is the most consequential problem in public life. It's not an HR fad, it's deadly serious. It really matters who's in charge.
Okay.
Gracias por la atención.
Pues muchísimas gracias a todos por estar aquí. Doctor Hogan, Wendy, Soler, Victoria. Vamos a darle un reconocimiento al doctor Hogan.
Dice, la Universidad Iberoamericana, Ciudad de México, otorga la presente constancia al doctor Robert Hogan por impartir la conferencia The Science of Personality on Leadership. Ciudad de México, 13 de febrero de 2025.
Es un libro sobre artesanía mexicana. Y ahora el maestro Edgar Fugier le va a dar un reconocimiento a Victoria Zapata.
La Universidad Iberoamericana Ciudad de México otorga la presente constancia a la licenciada Victoria Zapata Guerrero por su invaluable participación y realización de la conferencia The Science of Personality of Leadership. Muchísimas gracias. Un pequeño obsequio.
Gracias por todo el apoyo.
Un placer, al contrario, gracias a ustedes.
Exalumna como ella, así los queremos a todos, ¿eh? Que regresen aquí cuando estén siendo exitosos. allá
Encantada,
afuera.
encantada. Y todo se lo debo a la universidad. Están en la mejor universidad del mundo. Fíjense. Nada más les quiero platicar algo una anécdota, ahorita que lo dije porque me siento así como gallina culeca. En una ocasión trabajé en Lear Corporation y estaba yo estrenándome en una reunión en ¿cómo se llama? En la frontera norte, Ciudad Juárez. Entonces estábamos en la reunión, me estaban presentando como nuevo integrante, directora de capital humano de una división de automotriz. Entonces el señor, que es el líder que teníamos en ese entonces, era muy especial. Entonces me dijeron, sí, Victoria Zapata de la Universidad Iberoamericana. Y dice, ¿y qué es esa universidad? Ay, no, me picó el orgullo. Y le dije, la única que hay, o hay otra, enfrente de todo eran así como ahorita, así tal cual, eran directivos, y yo estaba estrenándome. Entonces, bueno, ahí les platico la historia que tanto quiero a mi escuela, que arriesgué mi pellejo en un trabajo. Gracias.
Bueno, hay un pequeño brindis, se nos acompañan, por favor, y las fotos con el doctor Hogan allá afuera.
Gracias. Esa tu historia fue cierta, ¿eh? Esa historia fue cierta. Sí. Mucho gusto. Yo te conozco a ti, pero ¿de dónde?
¿Qué cantina?
No, ya tengo mucho de no vivir en México.
Nosotros nos conocimos alguna vez, yo estoy con la firma de
¿Salvador qué?
Salvador y Sacrificio.
Ay, cómo olvidarlo, sí. ¿Sigues hablando con él?
Bueno, ya,
Ah, qué bueno.